Mercury is moving into Leo. Big ideas, perhaps being proud of our ideas, maybe even too proud of our ideas, perhaps not being prepared to listen to outside opinions. But then we've got to have confidence, and maybe Mercury in Leo will give us confidence. My name is Archie Dunlop. This is Talking Astrology with Archie, and in this video I will be looking at the weekend of August the 8th and 9th 2026, and this video will start with a broad overview of what's going on astrologically over the course of a weekend. Then I will specifically focus on Mercury in Leo, and then I will move to the 12 signs, and I'll be looking at what's going on for the 12 signs over the course of a weekend. And for most of the 12 signs I'll be considering the impact of Mercury moving into Leo, and then I will finish this video with an I Ching reading. One point, I've just launched the memberships for this channel, so if you want to join, I think it's $4.99 a month. The perk, if you like, the minimum perk of the membership is just an extra video every week. I anticipate this extra video will be of an instructional nature, though I will certainly be listening to the feedback and suggestions of any members I might get to see what kind of videos they are looking for. So anyway, let's start off by looking at the astrology of the weekend. So here is a chart set for midnight on Sunday the 9th of August. So here it is, and so this is like halfway through the weekend, obviously New York time, and so we see that the moon is at 27 degrees Gemini. So for all of Saturday the moon is indeed moving through Gemini, so it's a Gemini Saturday, and the moon makes a number of aspects. At the beginning of Saturday, it makes a sextile to Saturn, and it makes a sextile to the Sun. So we have just had a trine between the Sun and Saturn. I regard the Sun trine Saturn, as being quite a constructive aspect. Maybe I would say that. I've got a Sun trine Saturn in my own chart. I've got the Sun at 8 degrees Gemini, trine Saturn at 11 degrees Aquarius. Maybe that's how I managed to get through these videos, putting these videos out sort of day every single day, or at least 6 days a week. So yeah, I think it's a constructive aspect, and the Sun trine Saturn is still in orb, so it allows us to get things done to an extent. And the fact that the moon makes a sextile to Saturn and a sextile to the Sun, really helps us sort things out and create some focus, and yes, create some structure. So that is certainly good. But one thing about the weekend in general, both Saturday and Sunday, is that there are no planets in Earth signs, and this is a reality that we perhaps need to get used to, because until planets start moving into Virgo at the end of August, there are going to be great chunks of time with no Earth, and of course every now and then the moon will move into an Earth sign. So the moon has just moved out of Taurus. It will, in a week's time, it'll be in Virgo, and then sort of it'll move towards Capricorn. But by and large, this lack of Earth could be a problem. There is a lack of grounding. It's just a lot of ideas, maybe a lot of hot air, and what's going to come of it? And so having that Sun trine Saturn may be a bit of a saving grace. It allows us perhaps to create some order and to apply ourselves to something. And, without that Sun trine Saturn, things might be really quite chaotic. And so it's good that the moon picks up on that Sun trine Saturn, and, moon sextile Sun on Saturday, that is really, a very sort of constructive aspect, and also quite a harmonious aspect. Moon in Gemini, sextile Sun in Leo. Gemini and Leo are two signs that, have a good relationship with one another. Leo and Gemini, but there's not much conflict there. So that may say something about Saturday. Now, there is a biquintile on Saturday, a biquintile between Mars in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. So that might be about what we're trying to focus on. Mars quintile Pluto is about making the effort to get obsessed about something. We have the will. There's something we want. Deep down, we really want it. And we are going to be thinking perhaps about how we can actually get it. And we perhaps do this in quite a logical way, especially as Mars is in Gemini. And Pluto is in Aquarius. They're two planets in air signs. So we have to perhaps work out our strategy. So you want something, and then you decide how you're going to get it. And you're quite logical about it. I mean, the immediate impulse that you want something may not be logical. It just may be quite obsessive. I mean, it doesn't mean to say it's a bad thing just because it's obsessive and non-logical. It may be something that's important to you. But you then have to decide, what steps you have to take to, make it happen. And then, as Saturday moves into Sunday, the moon continues moving through Gemini. It does make a conjunction to Mars. And that Moon-Mars conjunction, it can be quite angry. I mean, it is in Gemini, so it's not a particularly intense sign for the Moon-Mars conjunction to happen, but it could be quite verbal. A lot of things to think about, a lot of things potentially to argue about, and certainly to discuss. So that might be how the Moon-Mars conjunction works. And then there is a sign change. The moon does move out of Gemini and into Cancer. So, but certainly by the end of Sunday, the moon will be in Cancer. And so probably when the moon moves into Cancer, there'll be less activity, certainly for most of the 12 signs. And the moon in Cancer does make a square to Venus. That moon square Venus could be a bit indulgent. The temptation to spend money, but one doesn't need to spend. But I mean, it can be quite a harmonious aspect it's a square, so we can't really say it's harmonious. But we can perhaps make a special effort to be nice to people, but we don't want to be too gushing with a moon square Venus. Could we be gushing? Yeah, but moon in Cancer square Venus in Libra. If we're too emotional, if we're too gushing, then Libra might get offended, or at least that might put things out of balance. So don't be too emotional on Sunday, because there's just this possibility of an inappropriate display of emotion. And in fact, the moon makes a T-square because we got Venus opposition Neptune, moon in, and then the moon in Cancer. So there's a cardinal T-square involving a moon. So that T-square, that could be emotionally gushing. It may be emotionally confused. There's a possibility of getting a sort of the wrong idea. But maybe moon in Cancer needs to try somehow to bring things down to earth and to create some stability. I mean, that's what Cancer is looking for. As Venus, Neptune, there are all sorts of areas in which one could be worried or get the wrong impression. And moon in Cancer is saying, well, do get real, really understand what those emotions are all about. And then right at the end of the weekend, we've got Mercury moving into Leo. And I'm not saying that is a critically important event, but you could still say that it's the main event of a weekend, and that's something I do want to discuss in a moment. But first of all, let's just quickly look at the picture for Sydney, Australia. So here is the weekend, the middle of a weekend set for Sydney as a representative of Australia and New Zealand. So the middle of a weekend, the moon is at 19 degrees Gemini. So for sure, whole of Saturday, the moon is in Gemini, and for most of Sunday. So if you are in Australia or New Zealand, there's the Cancer influence with the moon moving into Cancer. That's going to be, right at the end of a weekend. And so, it may not be, particularly relevant. And the Moon-Mars conjunction that I've been talking about, it's quite a potentially stressful. I don't think it's necessarily super emotionally stressful, but it could be quite verbal and just verbal irritation. That may say something about what Sunday is like, at least until the moon moves into Cancer. And then there is the heliocentric picture, putting, where has it gone? I've lost it. There's the heliocentric picture, putting the sun at the center of the solar system. So we have Venus has just gone into heliocentric Capricorn. And so Venus in heliocentric Capricorn is starting to make a square to Neptune. And so Venus square Neptune. Well, we've got Venus opposition Neptune geocentrically. We've got Venus square Neptune heliocentrically. So maybe this weekend is quite a Venus-Neptune weekend. Maybe I've underestimated that. And Venus and Neptune, I think that Venus and Neptune as a pair can be troubling. And say that as someone who's got a Venus trine Neptune in a horoscope. That's what I've got. Venus in Cancer, trine Neptune in Scorpio. But Venus Neptune can just be a bit confused, can get the wrong impression. It can be quite a problem aspect in terms of relationships, particularly new relationships or fantasies about new relationships. Having ideas about another person which are not necessarily real. Venus Neptune can drift. It can drift into fantasy, especially now when there are no planets in Earth signs. So I think you have to be very careful with Venus Neptune in terms of thinking about other people, thinking about relationships, and just allowing fantasy to get out of control, because that is obviously not very constructive. And Venus, after making the square to Neptune, will make a square to Saturn, but that's not going to happen immediately. So I think that Venus square Neptune does matter. Additionally, we've got Mercury in heliocentric Taurus, moving towards a square to the Earth. So Mercury square Earth. At a time when we've got Moon conjunct Mars in Gemini, there's just a bit of irritation there. Something we feel needs to be said, and are we going to find the right opportunity? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. And we're talking about Mercury. Well, geocentrically, we've got Mercury moving into Leo. And here is the precise moment that Mercury does move into Leo. So Mercury moves into Leo really towards the end of a weekend. Now, this chart is set for Washington, D.C. I could have said it for London, it doesn't matter. So Mercury moves into Leo at 12:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that will be on Sunday. So that's going to be Sunday evening. And so Mercury stays in Leo until August the 25th. And the question is, how important is it? Well, it is Mercury. And, Mercury is... it's a difficult planet to pin down because Mercury is so reflective of everything else in the chart. You've got to think about what aspects it has. You've got to do that with every planet, but Mercury in particular is kind of neither one thing nor the other. I mean, I kind of like to think about Mercury as kind of tofu. I mean, not that I really know anything about cooking, but I gather that the thing about tofu is that it's a bland substance, doesn't taste of anything. It's made from soybean, isn't it? And it takes on the flavor of whatever it is cooked with. And maybe that says something about Mercury. And so we have to be careful about getting too excited about Mercury in Leo. And the thing about Mercury in Leo is that, when Mercury moves into Leo, it's joining Jupiter and the Sun and the South Node in Leo. So we've already got loads of stuff in Leo. And so are we going to notice Mercury moving into Leo as well? I mean, I think we might. I mean, Mercury represents communication. It's the way we talk. And it's the way we think. And so, when Mercury is in Leo, it's quite a proud place for Leo. And, I've always felt, since the very beginning, when I started learning astrology, that Leo wasn't necessarily the greatest place for Mercury to be. Now, Mercury is not fallen in Leo. It's not in its detriment in Leo. But I still think that when Mercury is in Leo, it's kind of at a disadvantage because it's just too into itself. Mercury being in a fixed sign can be a problem because Mercury is essentially a flexible planet. That's how Mercury works best. The two signs where Mercury is really on best form are Gemini and Virgo. And so in Leo, it's too fixed, too stuck. Mercury needs some movement. And also, of course, with Leo, we've got this concept of pride and not wanting to be contradicted, believing one's got it right, one's got it sorted out. And so with Mercury in Leo, one can state things in a very sort of dogmatic way. And so with Mercury moving through Leo over the next few weeks, what can we do? Well, we can try not to be too dogmatic ourselves. It's good to be proud of our own ideas. It's good to believe in ourselves. It's good to hold firm to what we believe in. But we don't want to be dogmatic. And I just think that can be a problem with Mercury in Leo. But, I don't want to overstate it, and just remember Mercury does take on the planets around it. And the first thing that happens when Mercury moves into Leo is it moves towards an opposition of Pluto. Now that's something I will be talking about in a couple of days' time, maybe in my video for Monday or Tuesday. But that does seem very inflexible. So that might be for many of us our first response to Mercury moving into Leo. Perhaps at the beginning of a week, and then Mercury moves towards a conjunction of Jupiter. I'm quite sort of optimistic about that. That seems pretty good. And so those are a few general thoughts about Mercury in Leo. And so it takes place at 5:28 p.m. on Sunday, London time. So that means it will be at 28 minutes past midday on Sunday if you're in New York Standard Time, or what would that be? 9:28 in the morning on Sunday if you're in California or Oregon or British Columbia. Now let's just quickly look at Mercury on the 90-degree dial just to see if Mercury shows up sort of anything interesting. I mean, I don't know whether Mercury moving into Leo is a real point of power. It's not like Mercury moving onto a solstice point or an Aries point. It's not quite in the same league, is it? But if you're interested, so here's Mercury. It's in Leo. So let's just put Mercury on the dial to see if there's anything of interest. So Mercury is on the Sun Sun-Saturn midpoint. I mean, it's making a semi-square to the Sun-Saturn midpoint. And so with Mercury moving into Leo, for some of us, we might experience this as feeling that, some things have come to an end. I mean, that's how Sun-Saturn can be experienced. Sun-Saturn is a serious influence, and Mercury is about communication. It's about who we are communicating with. And so Mercury moving into Leo, for some of us might be the end of a relationship, a severing of ties. I mean, I'm not forecasting some dramatic breakdown or anything like that. I'm just saying that we might just feel that something's coming to an end, and it's quite subtle, and it's not dramatic, but that really might be how some of us experience that. And you can see there's Mercury on, there's Saturn on the Sun as well, and we just feel that it's maybe something that has just gone on for long enough, and now might be time to sort of break ties. And on a more dramatic note, it does seem that Mercury is on the Pluto-Zeus midpoint. So it's making a sesquiquadrate to the Pluto-Zeus midpoint. So with Mercury on the Pluto-Zeus midpoint, that may be that we feel we have to communicate in such a way that there is some drama. Pluto-Zeus, we want to create change. We want to create a dramatic change. We want to engineer a dramatic situation because it's necessary. I mean, that might be how it feels. Or perhaps we say something without really thinking it through, and it does have a dramatic impact, but it may not be us. It may be about what some politician is saying. But I'm just thinking maybe we shouldn't worry too much about Mercury moving into Leo. We should perhaps be looking at other things going on. We already know there are a lot of planets in Leo, and I just wanted to look at just a couple of people who have Mercury in Leo, just to maybe give a flavor of what Mercury in Leo is like. Barack Obama, he has Mercury in Leo, and Barack Obama has his Mercury at early Leo. Interestingly, Barack Obama has Mercury conjunct Black Moon Lilith in Leo, and I know that Barack Obama sort of comes over as maybe quite a sort of reasonable person. I mean, a lot of people like him, a lot of people hate him, but it depends, doesn't it? And if you've got Mercury in Leo, there is certainly a pride in what you say and a pride in his beliefs. And I know that Barack Obama might have come over as being at times quite reasonable, but maybe his beliefs were actually sort of more rigid than many people realized. And he does have Mercury opposition Jupiter, Mercury in Leo opposition Jupiter in Aquarius. I mean, that suggests someone who has got a lot to say, and when he was on good form, he was certainly a very effective speaker. He wasn't quite so effective in the run-up to the 2024 election, but certainly he was an effective orator in 2008. And Mercury conjunct true Black Moon Lilith, well, I'll leave that up to you, but that might say something about some of his beliefs that he doesn't always discuss. We just see one version of him, but I think on balance he was able to utilize his Mercury in Leo, pretty well. And so that's someone in the US. If you've been following the UK or you're in the UK, you will know about George Galloway. In fact, you might have been aware of George Galloway if you're in the US. I mean, he was a vigorous opponent of the George Bush's war in Iraq. I think he testified in Congress, and he has a YouTube channel. What's it? Moat, Mother of All Talk Shows, and So, I mean, I think that George Galloway would, in a way, sort of exemplify Mercury in Leo. You know, if you listen to him, he's obviously a very good orator in terms of British politics. He's probably one of the most effective orators. His command of the English language is very good. So you can sort of make a comparison between him and Nigel Farage. Very different political beliefs between him and Farage, but definitely in the oratory stakes, Farage and Galloway are kind of really sort of ahead of the opposition. So there is his Mercury and Leo, and if you listen to him, yeah, he is quite dogmatic. He does not really consider, alternatives, and that might be a criticism of Galloway, and that is the nature of Mercury and Leo. And, in his case, his Mercury is conjunct the Sun. So, yeah, he believes in himself. He believes in his ideas. And, that might say something about the next few weeks. I mean, not just about George Galloway, but the kind of world we're living in, where people are talking, people have got a lot to say for themselves. And, yeah, they don't want to be contradicted. And if you've got Mercury in Leo, another person who had Mercury in Leo who really believed in herself or believed in her particular philosophy was Gudrun Ensslin, and Gudrun Ensslin was a member of the Baader-Meinhof gang. So she was a German urban terrorist, guerrilla, however you want to describe her, who believed that violence was the only way of dealing with the world's problems. She's sort of given up on the peaceful process. And so again, Mercury in Leo. She has Mercury in, she had, I think she killed herself in prison in the 70s. And so she has Mercury conjunct Pluto. So Mercury conjunct Pluto in Leo, you can see someone who is really tied up with their ideas and is not prepared to consider, alternatives. And Mercury in Leo, Leo is a fire sign. It's a very intuitive sign. And like with Mercury in any other sign, you've got to consider what else is going on. And investor Jesse Livermore, I look at his chart fairly regularly because he was probably the most successful private investor who's ever lived, who sort of constantly made loads of money and went bankrupt, and that was a sort of stop-go part of his life. So he had Mercury in Leo, and he had a lot of planets in Leo, and Leo is an intuitive sign. You just get it. So the thing about Jesse Livermore, he was able to what they call observe the tape. So observe the tape was, seeing the changing stock prices, and he just knew where it was going. He didn't even feel where he was going. It was something quite intuitive, and maybe that's his Mercury. Mercury in Leo. But he also had the Sun in Leo and Venus in Leo and Uranus in Leo. So you could say in his case that Mercury was, like the tofu, just picking up on that Leo influence. But it certainly helped him make his sort of, quite sort of intuitive decisions, which very often were right. But when he was wrong, he was badly wrong, and he bankrupted himself. And Hunter S. Thompson. So Hunter S. Thompson, Mercury is about writing. It can be about writing. And so his writing was very particular. It was about himself and his particular view. And there's his Mercury in Leo, part of a grand trine. So you can see how Mercury in Leo, trine the Moon in Sagittarius, trine Saturn in Aries. Good to have a strong Saturn if you're a writer. I know his Saturn is fallen in Aries, but still Saturn gives Mercury some structure. And so that might be a good example of how Saturn can be helpful. And with that grand trine, that certainly helped him write in a particular way. It was a very particular way, so he became a renowned writer. Obviously, his most famous book is sort of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which had a particular style, a very a very personal style that was very particular to Hunter S. Thompson. And if you've got Mercury in Leo, you very often can communicate well. Joe Rogan, I've never actually watched his podcast, but I know that he is a major podcaster. It was said, Kamala Harris, she didn't get it together to get interviewed by Joe Rogan, and that was regarded as being a bit of a mistake. And Joe Rogan has Mercury in Leo, and you could say, with Joe Rogan, I think the excuse that the Kamala Harris campaign gave for her not being interviewed by Joe Rogan was, but they couldn't. But he insisted that people go to him to be interviewed. He's not going to go anywhere else to interview someone else, even if it's important like Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris was supposed to go and see him, go to his studio, but for one reason or another, she didn't get it together. So you could say Mercury and Leo on the IC, this person in his podcasting studio, and that's where he is, and he speaks with power. He gets an audience, and so you could say that his Mercury in Leo is working well. And okay, Mercury's on the IC, but you could say that anyone who's got Mercury angular means that Mercury is going to be quite prominent. And Mercury in Leo, in his case, really does seem to help. And Marine Le Pen, one of the leaders of the National Rally, the right-wing party in France, she has got Mercury in Leo, conjunct the Sun. I mean, Mercury in Leo conjunct the Sun can be a problem, perhaps because she gets rather carried away with her ideas, although she's certainly not as doctrinaire as her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen. I mean, she's kind of more flexible, and she realizes that she's got to compromise in order to get elected. She wants to be reasonable. She doesn't want to frighten people. But maybe that Mercury-Sun conjunction is not being entirely helpful. But if you've got Mercury conjunct Sun in Leo, there are things she believes in. If you know more about Marine Le Pen than me, then maybe you'll have some idea about how that Mercury in Leo is working or is not working. And finally, another person who's got Mercury in Leo, who I have not talked about for ages. She's not as newsworthy as she used to be. She used to be everywhere, and I'm not going to spend any time talking of consequence talking about her. Is of course Meghan, as in Harry. I haven't looked at her chart for ages, but she has got Mercury in Leo, and I think, from what I can see of her, what I know of her, and her ideas, and how she gets quite into her ideas, she has a plan, she executes this plan, and she's finds it a bit difficult to compromise. And I think that her Mercury in Leo could be a little bit of a problem, but she certainly believes in herself, and her Mercury in Leo on one hand is conjunct the North Node, which is quite good, so certainly someone who is at some level able to communicate, but then on the other hand it's conjunct the Sun, and that just might be just too much, having Mercury in Leo conjunct the Sun. So here are few famous people who have got Mercury in Leo. I think Mercury in Leo, in terms of the natal chart, as you have seen from some of the examples, it can be really good having Mercury in Leo. And perhaps in terms of what it means for the world with Mercury in Leo, it is a time for plain speaking, for expressing what we believe in, but we don't want to be too doctrinaire, and we don't want to fall for politicians and public figures who believe in themselves and their ideas just a little bit too much. And now I want to turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for the weekend of August the 8th and 9th. Aries, on Saturday, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. You're feeling that you've definitely got something to offer, and you see evidence of your own power, particularly on a verbal level. The moon is moving through Gemini. It's moving towards a conjunction of Mars. Of course, Mars is your ruler, and Mars is also in Gemini. So I think, Aries, that you're going to have a lot to say for yourself, and at the same time you'll generally feel that everything is in order, that you're able to create some kind of structure. And so if you want to drive your point home, I think you certainly can. And you can perhaps give different impressions maybe to different people. I mean, there is a certain levity that you can express if you want to. With Moon and Mars in Gemini, you have a sense of humor. You have a sense of humor, and there are different things you can talk about. And if someone wants to talk about something in particular, you've certainly got something to say. On the other hand, you know that there are certain issues and things and goals that really are important, and you do want to see them through. And if something is important, you're able to adjust your style, and that might be about telling yourself that this is serious, that you have got to show a serious approach in certain situations. And it might not be immediately obvious, immediately natural, but if you make an effort to be intense, perhaps giving the impression that you're more intense than you actually are, more passionate than you actually are, I think you can do a good job. And so that it seems to me that you're really, able to perhaps project yourself in a way that really suits your own best interests. And different situations do require a different approach, though don't say more than you have to. I mean, there is some possibility that you could really be too clever by half. I mean, I'm not saying it is going to happen, but there might be, for example, a situation where you just talk too much and you say something that you go too far, or you find you've said a word too many, and that could cause a bit of disruption, or you might find yourself having to explain yourself when really that shouldn't be happening. I mean, I'm not indicating that this is necessarily going to be the case, but do try to monitor your verbal output. Yes, your verbal output certainly on Saturday is very good, and you can talk about most things. I think you can come across as someone who is authoritative, but perhaps you just go too far in one particular area, and that would be unfortunate and unnecessary. Additionally, we've got a conjunction between the Moon and Mars in Gemini. Now, if that Moon-Mars conjunction was in a different element, or if it was in a water sign, it might be sort of more serious. But the fact that it's Moon and Mars is in Gemini, it's not quite as passionate and angry as it would be in other elements, other signs. Gemini does have a natural levity to it, and you're not going to take something so seriously that you cause a crisis. But there's no doubt that you can be argumentative if you want to be, and the question is that such a good thing? And also this Moon Mars conjunction is taking place very late in Gemini, and this is a reminder that Mars, your ruler, is very soon going to change sign. It's going to move out of Gemini and into Cancer. And that is certainly a big change. Mars is approaching the cardinal point, and that's something perhaps you're going to be aware of throughout the whole weekend. Okay, Mars does stay in Gemini over the weekend, but getting closer to 0 degrees Cancer, forget the fact that it's Cancer. Just think, this is the solstice point, and so that does maybe give you an increased amount of power and an ability to engage with the world, and that's kind of what you want to do. But then the moon changes sign, so the moon moves out of Gemini and then moves into Cancer, and that is a different energy. And when the moon moves into Cancer, you might feel that things are slowing down a bit. I mean, this doesn't take away from the fact that Mars is pretty close to the cardinal point, but as the moon moves into Cancer, you perhaps have less to say. You might be more focused on things that relate to fundamentally who you are, perhaps to your security, perhaps to the past, and there might be less to say. So as far as when the moon moves into Cancer, that takes place London time 8:46 on Sunday, so very early in the morning. If you're in early in the morning on Sunday, if you're in the Americas, sort of 3:46 in the morning. If you're in on Eastern Standard Time, Pacific, that would be what just after 1:45, 12:46 in the morning. If you're on Pacific time, so it is very early in the morning in the Americas. Okay, later, much later if you're in Australia or New Zealand. But whenever that happens on Sunday, you are to an extent brought down to earth, and there is less to say, and probably that is a good thing. The moon also does make a square to Neptune, so maybe on Sunday you're not going to be quite as sharp as you are on Saturday, and it might not be a great time to be making decisions. There are other things to consider. So if you've got loads to do this weekend, particularly in a social sense, I'd probably concentrate your activities on Saturday rather than Sunday. One other thing is that we have got Mercury moving into Leo. Now, Mercury moves into Leo, right at the end of a weekend. I think it's 5:28 in the afternoon on Sunday, London time, sort of around lunchtime, New York time on Sunday. So Mercury moving into Leo, that is a change, and it's a kind of a bit of a contradictory change. Just as Mars is moving into Cancer, and the moon, of course, moves into Cancer, early on Sunday. You have Mercury moving out of Cancer, and Mercury, does say something about how you communicate, what you've got to say, and you're going to have, there are going to be 3 planets in Leo. They're going to be, you have Mercury in Leo, you're going to have Jupiter in Leo, you're going to have Sun in Leo, and I think that while Mercury is in Leo, and it's going to be in Leo for most of the rest of August. Most of the rest doesn't sound particularly fluent. Most of the rest. It's because it's not the rest of August. So as far as when Mercury moves into Leo, let me just tell you, how long does Mercury move into Leo? Mercury moves into Virgo, on the 25th. So until the 25th of August, Mercury is in Leo, and along with the Sun and Jupiter, and that is about what you can do, how you can enjoy yourself, and it means, I think, that you're entering a period when you can really enjoy life. Not necessarily in a casual way, just having a great sense of who you are, what you can do well. And that's perfect if you're an Aries. So I do think that Mercury's movement into Leo for you is something very positive. And your Mercury in Leo, one can associate that with pride. You can be proud of what you do, proud of the ideas you have, and you can demonstrate that you can really do something well, and be proud of your achievements. That sign change for you, Mercury moving into Leo, Aries, I think is something very fortunate. Taurus. The moon is in Gemini on Saturday, and for much of Sunday it is in Cancer. So there is a sign change taking place over the weekend, and so it might be that the first part of a weekend is somewhat different from the second part. And on Saturday, with the moon moving through Gemini, it is possible that some of your efforts, or at least your thoughts, go into the area of money. I mean, I know that's not necessarily great. It doesn't sound very inspiring, but you are a Taurus. The material world does matter to you, and right now there is nothing in Earth. Nothing. Okay, Chiron is in an Earth sign. Chiron is in your sign, but Chiron is a very small body. I mean, I think it's a comet, isn't it? And okay, you got true black moon Lilith in Capricorn, but really, there's nothing in Earth. And so, being a Taurus, when there's nothing in Earth, that just might make you feel a little bit nervous, a bit, ungrounded, and yet you do know that money is important, and there might be a lot of thoughts about money. And because you can't ground these thoughts, or at least it might be difficult to ground these thoughts, then you might just go on and on and on, thinking about what has happened in the recent past, maybe feeling that you have been sort of let down. You may be sort of ruminating about something recently where you might have felt you were ripped off, or you bought something in error, you ordered something and it's kind of difficult to get your money back, and it is bothering you. And okay, it's good, but it's bothering you up to a point. But the question is, what can you do on a Saturday? It may be that you can't do a great deal, so there's no point in sort of ruminating about money, just for the sake of it, just because that's what makes you annoyed. Yet it's possible that you can do something constructive with money. I mean, the moon is it's moving through Gemini, and it's making a sextile to Saturn. It's making a sextile to the Sun, and those are good aspects. In fact, there is a point where the moon is on the Sun-Saturn midpoint. So I think that you may have the opportunity, Taurus, to do something really quite constructive of a financial nature, and so you can perhaps start a process by which you can maybe get some money back or make some new money, or it just may be about ideas, because I think right now you have a lot of ideas, not just on Saturday but on Sunday as well. You are sparking with ideas, and this has been developing over the last few days into the weekend. I think your brain has really been on good form, and so if you have ideas about doing something, you feel that you want to present yourself in a new way, I think that you can. Maybe there's even something quite inspired about it. Something might occur to you, possibly of a financial nature, but it just could be something else. You just have a brilliant idea, and if you've got a brilliant idea, then the question is, well, how do you ground it? Remembering there's no planets in Earth signs, well, perhaps it might just be a question of writing it down, just making a note of it, and at the first available opportunity, you can maybe sort of put theory into practice. Now, the moon does change sign, so it starts the weekend in Cancer, in Gemini, and then it moves into Cancer. And Moon moving into Cancer, in some respects, that does make things easier. The Moon, of course, is in its own sign in Cancer, and Cancer is the third sign from Taurus. Taurus number 1, Gemini number 2, Cancer number 3, and the Moon joys in Cancer. And so, in general, you're going to feel just better. Things are working better. You're feeling more comfortable, though there's still a feeling that just something perhaps has to be done. And the reason for that is, that when the Moon moves into Cancer, it does straight away make a square to Venus. It also makes an opposition to Neptune. In fact, it makes a T-square. So you've got this T-square. You've got Venus moving towards an opposition of Neptune, and of course Venus is your ruler. And yeah, I think you're starting to pick up on that Venus opposition Neptune. Some things may feel a little bit uncertain, and the question is, what do you do about it? And I think that by the end of the weekend, you may be feeling that things have got to be perhaps better organized, and then the Moon in Cancer having to deal with the squares to Venus and Neptune. Yes, it can be confusing, but I think that you actually have an opportunity to cut through the confusion. You can ask yourself, well, what is important, and what do you have to say? What do you have to communicate? And it's not like you've got it's not like there are loads of things you have to say. It's more about just having an understanding of what is happening, what's going on, an emotional understanding. And I think that can help you understand, what needs to be done, what particular tasks need to be done in order to make yourself feel more at home. And another thing to point out is that Mercury is changing sign. So on Sunday, Mercury moves out of Cancer into Leo, and it stays in Leo until August 25th. And so Mercury moving through Leo, it's kind of more of the same in the sense that you've got the South Node in Leo, you've got the Sun in Leo, you've got Jupiter in Leo. So Mercury is just yet another planet in Leo, so another planet in a fast sign. But Leo is an important sign for you, Taurus. It's about grounding. It's about what is important to you, and Mercury in Leo can be about communicating with the things that matter, and that might be about a type of thinking that does relate to the past. You're thinking back, and you're perhaps able to communicate about the past. And when you're talking about the past, I'm thinking more about the distant past. Maybe back to your childhood, maybe even back to what was going on in your family, before you were born. I think mainly in a positive sense, and also your family as well. So with Mercury in Leo, you may want to open new channels of communication with your family. Additionally, with Mercury in Leo, you're thinking about what is important to you. You might be thinking about your home and your family, and how you relate to home and family, and how you're talking to your relatives. And additionally, Mercury in Leo is a placement which is quite proud, and I think that it's okay, Taurus, to be proud of your past, even if you're not responsible for that past. You can be proud of what your family have done, and feel good about it. Don't don't rip the past up. Be aware of what has been done in the past, and if you've had events going on long ago even that you did a really good job with, well, think back about it, think back to them and be proud of them, and perhaps even let them be part of your present. So I think it can be really quite constructive, Mercury moving into Leo, and sometimes you've got to address the past and work out how you're going to turn the past into something constructive in the future, remembering that Mercury, when it moves into a Leo, it does start to make an opposition to Pluto. Now that opposition, I think, is really quite relevant to you, and that's certainly something I'm going to be talking about over the next few days. Gemini. For much of the weekend, the moon continues to move through your sign. And while it's moving through Gemini, the moon makes a sextile to Saturn, and it makes a sextile to the Sun, and it makes a conjunction to Mars. That reminds you that the Mars is still in your sign. It's getting very late in your sign, and soon enough it will be moving into Cancer. But for the moment, you've still got Mars in Gemini, and so with the moon making all those aspects, I think that does make you pretty dynamic. I think Gemini, you can express yourself with great power and conviction, and if you want to make an impression, then I think you really can. Yes, Gemini, you will have a lot to say for yourself, and there'll be a lot of ideas, and if you've got an idea, you'll want to sort of discuss it straight away. That is a Gemini thing, or it can be a Gemini thing. There is that certain restlessness, and that restlessness is very much in focus. And we also shouldn't forget that you've just had Venus moving into Libra, and Venus in Libra stays in Libra for a bit of time until September the 10th. So make sure that you make the most of having Venus in an air sign. So there is a certain lightness to Geminis right now, or at least there can be. There are things you want to talk about. You're not necessarily going to take everything seriously, although you can. And with the moon sextile Saturn, it might be that you have a chance to take something that is very ideas based, might seem a bit sort of up in the air, and you could, with effort, bring it down to earth. I say with effort because the moon is making a sextile to Saturn, and a sextile is an aspect that in some respects is quite easy. It's quite a constructive aspect, but there is some effort there, especially now because there are no planets in earth signs, and so with no planets in earth signs, there is a temptation, particularly if you're a Gemini, to sort of float free. Lots of ideas going all sorts of different places, but where are the actual results? So if you want to actually create those results, that might require some work. But I do think it's something that you can do. Recently we had a trine between the Sun and Saturn, and I think that Sun trine Saturn is a very constructive aspect, and the sign Gemini is on the midpoint, or was on the midpoint of the Sun and Saturn, and because Saturn was in Aries, Sun is in Leo, and what is the sign between Aries and Leo? Well, of course, that sign is Gemini, and the moon is moving through Gemini. So perhaps you shouldn't get too caught up in your ideas just for the sake of having ideas. Think about what can you do in a practical sense to actually make these ideas happen. Because if it is all theoretical, then in the end you could get a little bit annoyed. After all, the moon is making a conjunction to Mars, and with moon conjunct Mars, Possibly you could express some irritation if things aren't going your way. And it might be easy to blame other people. Perhaps other people are dragging their feet and you're asking, where are the results? And maybe it's just a question of the results being, down to you. Additionally, with Moon conjunct Mars, it is in a sense quite a verbal conjunction because it's in Gemini. And so maybe as that conjunction becomes exact, it is exact, I think it's exact at 6:27 a.m. on Sunday London time, which is late evening or very early morning on Saturdays if you're in the Americas. So it's at 1:27 a.m. on Sunday if you're in New York, or I think 10:27 p.m. on Saturday if you're in California. So that moon conjunct Mars, could be about your annoyance, and it could be that if you feel things aren't moving fast enough for you, you just have to say something. You maybe just can't help yourself, and words can be quite destructive. They really can with Moon conjunct Mars. So there is certainly a negative side to Moon conjunct Mars, but there's just no point in just getting angry for the sake of it. And I don't think if you do get angry, it'll be kind of verbal anger. I don't think the anger will have any real substance, but you just could say something that kind of reflects your irritation and impatience. And maybe if you are feeling impatient, it perhaps is something that you can sort out on your own. Maybe you don't need anyone else's help. You don't need to sort of blame anyone. And then the moon does leave Gemini. Sort of on Sunday, the moon moves out of Gemini. It moves into Cancer. And moon in Cancer, you could say, things do start to settle down. Things are not quite so crazy. Perhaps your mind starts to settle down, and you maybe become sort of more realistic. And with moon moving into Cancer, you might have sort of ideas relating to money, perhaps, or rather, you've had ideas in the past, but then with moon moving into Cancer, moving through Cancer, there might be the question of, for example, how do you pay for it? The moon in Cancer makes a square to Venus. Now, moon square Venus can be about financial indulgence. For some Geminis, there may be a tendency to buy something because it seems a quick solution. You've got a problem, you're thinking about it, what are you going to do? You just spend some money, and then later you kind of regret it. You're thinking, well, was that really necessary? Perhaps if you'd used your brain, if you'd done a little bit more research, you would have realized that really wasn't necessary. So probably with moon square Venus, it's not a good idea to just spend money on a whim, or because you suddenly think there's an immediate need. You need to sort of settle down and work out, what actually is going on, and maybe expenditure, isn't the answer. And additionally, right at the end of the weekend, we have Mercury changing sign, and of course, Mercury is your ruler. So Mercury has been in Cancer for ages, and finally it moves into Leo, and stays in Leo until August the 25th. So Mercury moving into Leo, that kind of says something about you. After all, Mercury is your ruler, and so over the next few weeks, you could in general become maybe sort of a bit prouder than usual. You might really start to believe in yourself and believe that you are right. And it's good to believe in yourself, but you don't want to take it too far, and you don't want to really sort of fly off the handle if anyone challenges or criticizes you or suggests that you're not 100% perfect. So some flexibility is a good idea with Mercury in Leo, but at the same time, Mercury in Leo definitely has its advantages. Geminis can ask themselves too many questions. They can have self-doubt. And perhaps with Mercury in Leo, it's good that you believe in yourself up to a point. You just don't want to take things too far. And Mercury, when it does move into Leo, it does start making an opposition aspect to Pluto. I mean, that's something that I'll be discussing, at the beginning of next week. But Mercury opposition Pluto, by the end of a weekend, you might just find that it is the end of a weekend that Mercury moves into Leo. So perhaps I should say, as you start moving into the new week, there are things that you're going to be taking really quite seriously, and you might even get a little bit obsessed about them. It is important, and you want to sort it out. And that is something that I will be discussing pretty soon. Cancer. The weekend starts with the moon in Gemini. And the moon in Gemini is making a load of aspects, some of which I think could be quite fortunate. So we have at the beginning of a weekend, for example, Moon making a sextile to Saturn, Moon making a sextile to the Sun, and then the Moon moves on and makes a conjunction to Mars. So with Moon conjunct Moon sextile Saturn, I think Cancer, on Saturday, in your own way, you can kind of, sort yourself out. And if you're doing anything on Saturday which is, related to work or career, or the way you are proceeding with your various ambitions, I think you can do a good job, and you can do it in such a way that it doesn't really attract any attention. So if there's something that is important to you and you want to get on with it, and you don't want any disturbances with moon sextile Saturn, then go ahead. And the Moon is also picking up on the fact that there is a trine between the Sun and the Saturn. So Moon, having made the sextile to the Sun, it moves on and makes a sextile to the Sun. And so, Moon sextile Sun, great aspect. It's a very harmonious aspect. And so you can, in general, do stuff that you feel good about. And it's the right thing to do, and you feel healthy and comfortable, and you don't have to draw attention to yourself. And in fact, the less you draw attention to yourself on Saturday, the better. And the Moon does move on, and it does move on towards a conjunction of Mars. And so that conjunction to Mars could be an irritation, because Mars is quite an angry planet. Okay, in Gemini, it's perhaps not quite as angry as it would, say, be in Scorpio or Cancer, but you're able to show verbal irritation. And if you can be verbally irritated, if you have a capacity for verbal irritation, then you could say that you should stay out of trouble. Another good reason for keeping a low profile. And maybe Cancer, you can kind of transform the Moon-Mars energy. Instead of getting annoyed with other people or even annoyed with yourself, perhaps just concentrate on one thing that is important to you, and you can just get on with it in your own way, and you can really do a good job. Then the Moon does change sign. So the Moon does actually move into your sign, and this takes place at 6:27 a.m. London time on Sunday morning. So in the Americas, that happens very early on Sunday. In Australia or New Zealand, that will be more about late evening not late evening, but sometime on Sunday evening. But anyway, the point is the Moon is going to move into your sign, and so when the moon moves into your sign, as always, that's going to feel quite good. You feel that things are finally coming together, and you can be yourself more, and you don't have to try to be anything that you're not. And I think you can be sort of more open. While the moon was in Gemini, you perhaps weren't particularly inclined to relate to other people. With moon in Cancer, I think it's kind of easier. But I think you're still going to, value your own company. I mean, the moon does make a square to Venus, and so with Venus moving through Libra, as I've already discussed, a couple of days ago, while Venus is moving through Libra, Cancer, this can be a time where you do enjoy being at home, being somewhere that is safe and secure. You might also have ideas about the way your home should be organized, decorated, art within the home. And so with moon in Cancer square that Venus, that just might be more appreciating your own home, more just not feeling you have to be anywhere else. Although in terms of family relationships, with moon in Cancer square Venus in Libra, there may be just a slight feeling of incompatibility, or being slightly irritated with members of your family, some members of your family. It could be just a clash of style, but I don't want to overstate it. I think that it's something that can be managed. And then right at the end of a weekend, we do have Mercury moving out of Cancer. So you've had Mercury in Cancer for ages, and I think Mercury has done well for you in Cancer. I think it's said something about the way you've been able to communicate, the way you've been able to think about yourself, and now it's moving into Leo, and so that does happen right at the end of a weekend, as you move into next week. And with Mercury in Leo, it could say something about the way your ideas are developing and what is starting to become important to you. And there could very well be a financial side to it. I mean, the financial side of things is already quite strong, because we've got the Sun and Jupiter in Leo, plus the South Node. And so with Mercury in Leo, there's even more of an inclination to think about money, to be even concerned about money, and to see money as being a source of pride. And at the same time, if you feel you're not being paid enough money, or someone's being paid money and you're not being paid money for, I don't know, for example, for doing the same job, that's not going to please you. Because money is, in a sense, is a token of recognition, even if the actual sum of money doesn't necessarily matter. So you are definitely going to want to be paid properly for what you are doing. And if you're not, it's perhaps a time to do something about it. You don't have to be particularly dramatic about it, even though Leo is a dramatic sign. And don't forget that Jupiter is in Leo. Jupiter stays in Leo until July of next year, until July of 2007. So although Mercury is starting to make a conjunction to Jupiter, I don't think you should regard that as being an absolute urgency. It's just over the next year, nearly a year, there are perhaps things to work out with money, and I think that Mercury moving into Leo is just going to help you. It's going to help give you pointers to what actually needs to be done. Leo, Mercury this weekend moves into your sign, and in fact, it moves into your sign pretty late in the weekend. Maybe sort of lunchtime on Sunday if you're in the Americas, something like that. Or I make it 5:28 on the afternoon on Sunday. So it's not something that is going to sort of dominate the weekend, but when you move into next week, you will find that the Mercury is for sure in a Leo. Now the question is, are you going to feel Mercury moving into Leo? Because you've already got the Sun and Jupiter in Leo, but now you're going to have Mercury there as well. So you're going to have these three planets in your sign until the end of the month, because the Sun will leave Leo and move into Virgo at the end of the month, and of course Mercury will stay in Leo until August the 25th. So there is a lot of focus on your sign, and Leo, this is a time when you can really project yourself very well, and you also have the moon in Gemini on Saturday, making a sextile to the Sun in Leo. So moon sextile Sun, that is a great way to begin the weekend. You feeling a sense of agency and harmony, feeling good about yourself, and also from a social viewpoint, feeling quite good about the people around you, and feeling that you are in the right place, and if there's something that isn't quite right, you know that you can make the necessary changes. So a lot is kind of coming together, and I think that overall it's a good weekend. But of course, we're talking about two things here. There is the sort of the more long-term event of Mercury moving into Leo. That says something about the next few weeks. Shorter term, we've got on Saturday Moon in Gemini, just a great place for the moon to be in from a Leo perspective. It gives you some balance. It allows you to think things through. It allows you to be quite sort of spontaneous and sort of verbal, and you can express your ideas and express who you are, extremely well. And talking about ideas, this weekend, you're going to have a lot to think about. You will be, almost, maybe even on fire with your ideas. There's something quite inventive about you as you think about various things, various possibilities, and if you are able to talk about your ideas, I think that you can actually make a big impression. So Leo, don't be shy, and don't be worried that you might get a negative response, that you might get some criticism. Yeah, you might get criticism, but Leo, criticism is part of being alive. You might even get some constructive criticism, because there are no planets in earth signs at the moment, and sometimes one can have these crazy ideas that in themselves are really impractical, and sort of getting some feedback can actually be quite useful. Now, things do change a bit as you move into Sunday, because the moon changes sign. The moon moves into Cancer, and so with the moon moving into Cancer, I think that things will slow down. And you might then feel that you don't want to necessarily be part of things. You might begin to appreciate your own company more, and maybe Sunday is a chance to just have a break. To step back, maybe recharge your batteries, and and then, perhaps, at a later stage, early next week, when the moon moves into Leo, you'll be ready to get back into the fray. Now, going back to that Mercury moving into Leo, just one point about Mercury moving into Leo is that, Mercury in Leo obviously is good for you. I mean, it's good to have all these planets in Leo, but Leo is a sign that can sometimes be a bit opinionated, can be rather arrogant, I'm not saying Leos are arrogant, by the way. I mean, that is just some sort of stereotypical idea that some astrology books like to like to go on about. But with Mercury moving into Leo, Mercury, I'm not convinced that Mercury works particularly well in Leo. It's not like Mercury is in its detriment or fall in Leo, but sometimes Mercury in Leo can be a little bit focused, a little bit close-minded. And so while Mercury is moving through Leo, between now and August the 25th, by all means be proud of who you are. Be proud of your ideas, be proud of your intellect, but don't completely shut off the outside world. Don't reject criticism. Don't believe that you've got all of the answers. You might have most of the answers, but there's still stuff to be learned, still people to listen to. Virgo. The big event of the weekend is arguably Mercury moving into Leo. The reason it's a big event is because, of course, Mercury is your ruler. Mercury indeed rules Virgo. And so, because Mercury rules Virgo, so when Mercury changes sign, that just says, a great deal about how you articulate yourself, what you sort of believe about yourself, how you communicate. And with Mercury moving into Leo, that does indicate that perhaps, Virgo, you're going to start to have quite a high opinion of yourself. And there's nothing wrong with having a high opinion of yourself, by the way. Sometimes Virgo can just be a little bit too modest. It's often said, isn't it, with Virgo, that it's a sort of a service-orientated sign, that Virgo does things for other people, is not looking for recognition. That's very nice. I don't know whether that's true for you, but with Mercury moving through Leo, I think you are looking for recognition, and perhaps the contradiction there is you want recognition. But at the same time, you may also want to be quite low profile. You may not want to be out there in the public. You don't want too much attention. And so perhaps, Virgo, you should be proud of what you're doing, without needing any feedback. Because you just know, you know you're doing the right thing. And besides, Mercury is soon going to move into Virgo. It's going to move into your sign on August the 25th. So in just a few weeks' time, Mercury moves into your sign, and that's great. I mean, that's going to really make you feel good about yourself. The Virgo season is close. And the Sun, of course, will move into Virgo soon enough. So while Mercury is moving through Virgo, Mercury is moving through Leo. It would be nice if you got loads of praise. Maybe you'll do something to attract that praise, but it's not compulsory. And if it appears that you're not being noticed, you're not being supported, don't worry about it. But it's just a perception, and you can be confident that you really are doing things right. Now, as far as the specifics of a weekend is concerned, Saturday and Sunday could be quite different days. So on Saturday, Virgo, we have the moon moving through Gemini, and it's Gemini is, as I keep saying, is quite a high-profile sign in the Virgo chart. It's about you not just getting attention, but actually thinking about what it is that you want to achieve. And with Uranus moving through Gemini, it's about you doing something very particular, which is very individual. It could even be rather sort of revolutionary and disruptive. And so with Moon in Gemini, I would have said that on Saturday, try to do as much as possible. And if you're doing something constructive, perhaps relating to work or career, that would be a good way of using Saturday. Even if you are not doing anything in particular, you can still do the planning. It might be a good time for planning. Now, you might be rather impatient with planning because right now there are no planets in earth signs, and I think that as a Virgo you might really feel that you being an earth sign, you understand the importance of grounding, and it just isn't so much grounding, and things can just be a little bit too theoretical for your liking. But maybe there's a place for theory, and you have sort of ideas, and if you've got an idea, then just work it through and just see what you can do to, put that idea into practice. Maybe not immediately, but at the next available opportunity. Now, on Saturday, we do have a semi-sextile between Mercury and Mars. So Mercury on Saturday is going to be right at the end of Cancer, and it makes a semi-sextile to Mars. And so Mercury semi-sextile Mars can be something that just irritates you. It could be, for example, that you talk about something and you get feedback that you don't appreciate, or you hear something, or you realize something, maybe about your sense of direction that doesn't make a great deal of sense, or it annoys you. But if you hear something that you don't want to hear, don't just immediately become defensive with Mercury semi-sextile Mars. Perhaps a friend tells you something, you don't appreciate it, but try to understand the other person's perspective, because it's quite possible that they are just trying to help. And then on Sunday we do have a sign change. The moon moves out of Cancer and out of Gemini and into Leo, and out of Gemini and into Cancer. And I think perhaps you become, a little more relaxed. You start to see that there isn't so much urgency, and perhaps on Sunday you can, maybe afford to be a little more sociable. Libra. Venus, of course, is now in your sign, moving through the first degrees of your sign. And, I'm hoping that you're already, starting to, feel the advantages of this change. Hopefully you're feeling, good about yourself. You feel, a certain sense of your own power. And from a social perspective, I think it is a time when, you can, project yourself very well. And you have a good understanding of social dynamics and the balance of your social environment. And of course, Venus stays in Libra for some time until when is it? September the 10th. And while Venus is moving through Libra, an air sign, we also have the moon moving through an air sign, moon moving through Gemini. Throughout Saturday, you've got moon in Gemini, and moon in Gemini is a good place for the moon to be from a Libra perspective. And the moon is making a sextile to Saturn. It's making a sextile to the sun, and so you're feeling quite confident. You're living in an interesting world. This is a world you want to find out about. I mean, it's a good time to be asking questions and perhaps ever so gently challenging your own beliefs. I mean, not challenging your beliefs in some sort of destructive and cathartic way, but just, testing the waters, seeing whether existing beliefs, are really workable, experimenting with something else, And so, I do think that all of this is constructive. And of course, the moon is making a sextile to Saturn. And so with moon sextile Saturn, it could be that, you can, benefit from, other people's feedback, other interaction with people who, may have a very different view from your own. Though the moon does make a conjunction to Mars. So this moon Mars conjunction is developing over the course of Saturday and even into Sunday. And with moon conjunct Mars, it's a very vibrant aspect, and it could say something about another person's response. Mars is ruler of Aries, your opposite sign, and it could be about a heated argument, perhaps about something political, religious, or philosophical. That's certainly a way this Moon-Mars conjunction could work. But it is in an air sign, so it's not really very serious. It is about words. It is about ideas, and so probably Libra. It's a good idea, not to take anything too seriously. But sometimes an argument, a discussion can be very helpful. I've been saying over the last few days, Libra, that your mind is on great form. Your mind continues to be on great form. You are full of ideas, and you've got something to say about everything. And you've got some ideas which maybe you want to keep to yourself, and things occur to you that could be just interesting and exciting, but yeah, maybe you want to keep it to yourself. But if you want to talk about your ideas and you want to talk about other people's ideas in quite an excited way, then I would have said, go ahead. Now, things do change as you move into Sunday, because the moon changes sign. The moon moves into Cancer. And the moon in Cancer makes a square to Venus in Libra. And this moon-Venus square can work in different ways. One way in which moon square Venus can work is just being indulgent, just perhaps seeing opportunities but not necessarily taking advantage of them, not really doing anything, perhaps being, ever so slightly lazy. This is a way moon square Venus can work, but it's not the only way it can work. It can be very helpful, this moon square Venus, particularly if you've got something that you're able to focus on, because, the moon moving into Cancer can make you think about, what needs to be done, what you would like to do, about your ambitions. And when it makes a square to Venus, Venus is you, Venus is in Libra, Venus is in its own sign. And that can actually make you feel, quite positive and believing that if you get the chance, you really can, make things happen. And so on Sunday, perhaps while other people are slowing down, you're starting to think about what actually can be achieved. And I've just talked about all these ideas that you have. I think you do have a lot of ideas. So as you move into Sunday, perhaps ideas are not enough. You're thinking, well, what can you actually do to make these ideas happen? It's not necessarily 100% easy. There are no planets in Earth signs. So yeah, with no planets and Earth signs, there's plenty of scope for just talking, and just nothing gets done. But I think you have the impetus to create change, to think about what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and that might be something to think about. As you move into the new week. Additionally, we have Mercury moving into Leo. So Mercury moves into Leo, right at the end of a weekend. And so Mercury moving into Leo is not really saying anything about the weekend itself, but it's perhaps saying something about, the next few weeks. And it just is another planet in Leo. You've got the Sun in Leo, you've got Jupiter in Leo, you've got South Node in Leo, now you've got Mercury in Leo as well. And so, with Mercury in Leo, and it'll be in Leo until, the end of August. I think August 25th, it changes sign and moves into Virgo. But while Mercury is in Leo, I think that does help you in terms of your social life, getting on with people, and finding constructive friendships, and also thinking in general about where exactly are you going, which people can help you, which people really are useful in terms of helping you understand the future and understand what kind of future you would like to have. And some people are perhaps unhelpful. They represent the past, or they represent something that really has nothing to do with you. So, do think about your choice of friends and your social activities and things that you're part of, societies that you're part of, whatever other groupings you're involved with. Some are constructive, and some might be less constructive. Scorpio. Look at Mars. Remind yourself that Mars is getting to be very, very late in Gemini. It's now at 28 something Gemini. So next week, Mars will be moving into Cancer, and that is quite a big change for you. And I think it's going to be a fortunate change. Mars in Gemini, it's a bit of a problem placement. It perhaps is about you maybe thinking too much, and you just knowing that you're thinking too much. You're asking yourself, where are these thoughts going? And certain things could be just annoying, and you're perhaps keeping it to yourself, and you don't want to keep it to yourself. So yeah, there is a certain irritation there. And additionally, Mars is starting to move towards the solstice point. So the solstice point is, of course, 0 degrees Cancer. And now it's about 1.5 degrees from the solstice point, so it's close enough for you to be starting to feel the impact. So when we're talking about the solstice point, well, the solstice point is square the Aries point, and it's connected with, if you like, the world at large. And so this means, Scorpio, that perhaps you are starting to align yourself with the wider world. You're perhaps starting to see your role, and you may feel that there is something you have to do, that you have to, tell everyone what you believe in, or it could represent some public role that is waiting for you, with Mars on close to the solstice point. So it doesn't matter which side of the solstice point Mars is in, whether it's in very late Gemini, moving towards 0 degrees Cancer, or or in very early Cancer, just moving away from the solstice point. The point is, you have a role to play, and being a Scorpio, this might not be a role that you necessarily want to play, but when you look at what's going on and how you're responding to it, can you stay on the sidelines forever? And as you move through Saturday, we've got the moon in Gemini as well, so we've got a build up to this Moon Mars conjunction, which takes place on a Saturday morning, certainly Saturday morning, 6:27 a.m. London time, 7:27 a.m. Sorry, did I say Saturday morning? I meant Sunday morning. Sunday morning, we've got Moon conjunct Mars, London time at 6:27 a.m., which is going to be much earlier in the Americas. Sort of middle of the night as Saturday changes to Sunday. So Moon conjunct Mars could make you feel angry. It could make you feel annoyed. You feel that something has to be done, and there might be an inclination, nonetheless, to just keep it to yourself because you just don't have the opportunity. You don't seem to have a way to fully express yourself. But there is a way. Because over the last week and more, Scorpio, you have had this underlying belief that things are going to be okay, that you're going to find a way of doing whatever it is that you want to do. And then we have the moon moving into Cancer. So by the end of the weekend, the moon has changed sign. And moon in Cancer is just, easier. It is more about perhaps your ideas. You're less defensive with the moon in Cancer, and it's clear that there are just more things that you can do, and you can see what kind of changes you want to make. And in fact, what we perhaps have over the weekend is we have a transition between sort of two quintile series aspects. So the weekend starts with Mars biquintile Pluto. So Mars biquintile Pluto is perhaps more about Saturday. Sun quintile Uranus is about more about Sunday. So Mars biquintile Pluto might be you feeling at the beginning of a weekend, but things are difficult, that things are tough, but there are things that are very important to you, and you need to make a big effort to give the right impression. Perhaps make an effort to keep things to yourself, and to be not just intense, but sort of secretive as well. And you almost want people to know that's where you feel. That's your style. And I think that style can be quite effective. I think that people will take you seriously. But then by the end of a weekend, that Sun quintile Uranus is starting to manifest. And Sun quintile Uranus is a more open quintile series than a part of a series. I'm kind of treating a biquintile and a quintile as kind of the same aspect, which is probably the right way of doing it. So I think one can say that the Sun quintile Uranus is a more open quintile than Mars biquintile Pluto. So with Sun quintile Uranus, you're starting to feel that actually you can make things happen. There's no need to be frustrated, and it just requires you to work out what those logical steps are. You have that willpower. Every Scorpio has a really strong willpower, and you believe that things are possible. And with Sun quintile Uranus, you see what changes need to be made, and perhaps you reach the conclusion that you have to be somewhat disruptive. Sometimes it's okay to be disruptive, because people need to listen. And this Sun quintile Uranus could actually be quite useful as you move into a new week. I think you can hit the new week as you move into Monday as being someone who is powerful, who is able to create change. And this also links up with the fact that Mercury is moving into Leo. So Mercury moves into Leo right at the end of a weekend, stays in Leo until August the 25th. So for the next few weeks, Mercury joins Jupiter and the Sun in Leo, and this is a time, Scorpio, when you can really express who you are and what you want and what is important to you. And furthermore, Mercury, when it moves through into Leo, is going to start to make an opposition to Pluto. That's something I'll be discussing in a few days' time. And Mercury opposition Pluto, it's a strong aspect, and it is about power, and it's you able to express what is important to you. And that's something I will be talking more about very soon. Sagittarius. At the beginning of a weekend, the moon continues its movement through Gemini. The moon is moving towards the end of Gemini, and it makes some useful aspects. It makes a sextile to Saturn. It makes a sextile to the Sun, and so I'm thinking that your general relations with other people should be pretty good. I think that your ability to speak openly is going to be good. I think if something bothers you, you'll be able to talk about it in that sort of normal Sagittarian way. But you don't have to say everything on your mind. Sometimes Sagittarius can be rather blunt and tactless. You just say what is obvious to you, and you just think that's the right thing to do, just being honest. But not everyone always appreciates that. Don't forget that, the moon might be making a harmonious aspect to the sun, but then it does move on to make a conjunction to Mars. And so, moon conjunct Mars, Sagittarius, in your opposite sign could be somewhat destabilizing. It could sort of stir things up, and you might, for example, say something that doesn't go down well. It's something that perhaps another person doesn't want to hear, but you just have to say it. And so Sagittarius, do try to show some tact. Just because you can say something, it doesn't mean you have to say it. And perhaps it's just something that you can just keep to yourself. Maybe you can discuss it at a later stage, because with moon conjunct Mars, people could get irritated for no particular reason. It could just come out of nowhere. Maybe you haven't noticed that someone's getting annoyed about something, but they are, certainly behind the scenes. And then the moon changes sign. By the end of the weekend, the moon is in Cancer. And with the moon in Cancer, perhaps you're going to be a little more subtle with moon in Cancer. The desire to be direct and to the point may not be quite so strong, and there may be things that you feel should be kept to yourself, and perhaps you'll have a greater awareness of other people's emotions and your emotions as well, and you may just be able to just sort of pick up on things going on around you of an emotional nature. So with moon in Cancer, perhaps you'll become sort of more settled, and the concept of relationships, well, certain relationships may not be quite so important. You may not regard other people as being so important, but if you are spending a lot of time with one person over the weekend, then as the moon moves from Gemini to Cancer, things just might become a little more intense, less verbal, but there might be a lot of the sort of unspoken things going on which you need to pay some attention to. And one thing going on this weekend, right at the end of a weekend, is Mercury changing sign. And Mercury changing sign, okay, Mercury moves into Leo. That is another planet in Leo. We've already got Jupiter in Leo. We've already got the Sun and the South Node in Leo. When Mercury moves into Leo, it does actually start making a conjunction to Jupiter. And I think Mercury making a conjunction to Jupiter can be helpful in many ways. I think it can be helpful, in terms of relationships. And so, in fact, with Mercury moving into Leo, it may be that someone new arrives on the scene, or someone starts becoming attracted to you, or you start to see a possibility for constructive engagement with another person. So that is a way of looking at Mercury conjunct Jupiter. But Mercury can also be about ideas in general, and you wanting to take things further, looking at things in a new way. And it also just builds up on the Leo emphasis, and with this Leo emphasis, you might feel just a need for a change of scene, for sort of inspirational reasons. You want to be inspired. You're looking for new inspiration. Mercury in Leo, for example, some Sagittarians might respond to Mercury in Leo by feeling they have to go somewhere. They have to go traveling, go to a different country, a different continent. That might be your first impulse. The reality is, if you're looking for something new, you don't have to travel. It's right in front of you. You just have to look at things from a different perspective. But it certainly does make you sort of more exploratory, and you're just interested in what is happening around you. And so that's something to potentially take advantage of. Additionally, with Mercury and Leo, is probably in your interests to look at things in a new way. If, for example, at work there might be changes. technology, for example, or new ideas, new ways of working. And with Mercury in Leo, I think that that's something you should be thinking about, and not being afraid of change. In fact, you might be able to benefit from change, especially as Mercury is moving towards a conjunction with Jupiter, your ruler. Capricorn, I still think that you are picking up on the trine between the Sun and Saturn. So recently, the Sun in Leo has been trine Saturn in Aries, but I still think it's important, especially on Saturday. You feel that you want to make things real. That might be a concern of yours. You are a Capricorn after all. You don't like too much speculative thinking. Especially now when there are no planets in Earth signs. Really, there aren't any. There's nothing in Virgo. There's nothing in Capricorn except for true Black Moon Lilith. Okay, I'm sure you can find some asteroid or a space station in Capricorn, but really there isn't really anything in Capricorn. Or maybe there's an artificial satellite, or I'm sure there are loads of Starlink satellites in Capricorn, but really there's nothing in Capricorn. And likewise, nothing in Taurus except for Chiron. And you feel that, Capricorn. You want to be able to really relate to the material world. And it's kind of annoying when, everything is theoretical and, up in the air. And so, with Sun trine Saturn, it's not the same as a planet in an Earth sign, but at least it provides the opportunity of some basic structure. And having the moon in Gemini making a sextile to the Sun and sextile to Saturn, Capricorn, this takes place on Saturday, just does allow you to kind of get things together and to kind of ground things to some extent. It may not be perfect, but at least you're doing something. And, as far as Saturday is concerned, I just think that you're just going to want things to be settled, and I don't think you want any nonsense. You don't want any distractions. You certainly don't want too much theorizing about things that really don't mean very much, at least in a practical sense. And you're still perhaps getting used to the fact that Venus is now in Libra, and Venus in Libra for you, Capricorn, is quite practical, and it is about you thinking about what it is that you would like to achieve, what kind of results you're looking for. Now, not all of these results are going to be material. They may be social results, getting on with the right people, perhaps thinking about your own interests. Certain people can be helpful, certain people can be useful. And so with Venus in Libra, that is kind of what you're thinking about. And so as you move into the first part of a weekend, you're looking for things to be as down to earth as possible, and you're going to be sort of irritated by things that just don't seem relevant or just seem too speculative. And then the moon does change sign. The moon moves out of Gemini because it starts the weekend in Gemini, but on Sunday the moon is moving into Cancer. And with the moon moving into Cancer, that does create a sort of a change of emphasis. Moon in Cancer is of course your opposite sign, and the moon in Cancer can say something about relationships, how you get on with other people, or how you don't get on with other people. The moon in Cancer does make a square to Venus in Libra, and that moon Venus square could be slightly tense. I mean, it's not an angry square really, moon square Venus, but it just could be that certain people are slightly annoying, or you might resent the fact that you're having to do something in another person's way. You want to do things your way, and having to accommodate another person may not be entirely to your liking, particularly if you're having to focus away from some of your prime goals. You have your ambitions, there are things you want to achieve, but if you have to focus on what someone else wants to achieve, or you have to focus on what another person is talking about, that could be annoying. But you never know, you might be able to benefit from another person's perspective. So as far as Sunday is concerned, I think it is likely that relationships are going to become, more important. And that might seem annoying, but I don't think it has to be annoying. And I think you should really try to understand, what people have got to offer, because it may be that they have more to offer than you realize. So there is a change over the weekend, and you also have Mercury moving out of Cancer. I don't think Mercury moving out of Cancer and into Leo is such a big deal for you. You already know that there are a lot of planets in Leo. You already knew that. You've got the Sun in Leo, Jupiter in Leo, and perhaps with Mercury moving out of Cancer into Leo, it may say something about how you communicate, and it just could be that a conversation you are having, and perhaps an ongoing conversation you are having with another person, might get more complicated. There might be other things to consider as Mercury moves into Leo, and you may have to sort of make more of an effort to look under the surface, and you can't take things at face value. And it's very difficult to take things at face value at the moment anyway, because as I already said on this piece in Capricorn, there are no planets in earth signs. And so if there are no planets in earth signs, sometimes you have to look for your grounding and your cues, and look for reality in different areas. What's in front of you might not tell you very much. You may have to be sort of focusing on other things, perhaps non-verbal cues, even your feelings and your intuition. Aquarius. The weekend starts with the moon in Gemini. And so we've got quite a lot of air at the beginning of the weekend. You've got moon in an air sign. We've got Mars in an air sign. Mars stays in Gemini for all weekend, but it is getting ready to move into Cancer. And of course we have got Venus in Libra. Yesterday we had a grand trine in air signs. Still got a lot of air, and that means that there is, Aquarius, a lot to think about, perhaps a lot to speculate. When I say speculate, I'm talking about ideas. We can speculate on this possibility or that possibility, and that might just be what you want to do. You don't necessarily want to do anything that is of lasting significance. Maybe you just don't want to commit. You don't want to commit yourself to any particular plan or idea. It's best to just keep things in the sky, at the level of the clouds, and just not feel that you are making any concrete plans. And that's perhaps a way to use the air signs, although the moon is making a sextile to Saturn at the beginning of the week. And this moon sextile Saturn, and in fact the moon is making a sextile to the sun as well, does come just after the sun trines Saturn. So we had sun trine Saturn very recently, and that sun trine Saturn still there. It's still with you, and I think that sun trine Saturn is kind of demanding some kind of organization. Things aren't or needn't be as chaotic as they seem on the surface, and sometimes you have to make a commitment. And that Sun trine Saturn is perhaps asking you to sort of tune into your fundamental seriousness, and that may particularly relate to other people. I've already discussed Sun trine Saturn with you, and I think that it's an aspect that could very well be about relationships. Don't forget, Saturn is your ruler, rules Aquarius. Sun rules Leo, your opposite sign. So when Sun is trine Saturn, that can indicate that you and someone else, do have a real connection. And on Saturday, with a Moon making a sextile to Saturn and a sextile to the Sun, that can be, more of the same. And so, don't ignore relationships, particularly on Saturday, because I think that there is, good work to be done. Additionally, on Saturday, we have a quintile between Mars and Pluto. And, this Mars and Pluto is, a biquintile between Mars and Pluto, an 144-degree aspect. So, Pluto is moving through Aquarius, through the beginning of Aquarius, and it's a placement that I think is very important for you. It's talking about the changes you're able to bring, or you could bring, not just changes, but indeed it could be just about transformation. And Mars biquintile Pluto can be about you, making certain decisions, deciding that enough is enough, that you actually want to change things in a lasting way, and this is where you want to put your energy. You may be thinking about the wider world, your place in the wider world, and thinking that, well, it could be better, it could be improved upon. And so there is an underlying ambition to Mars quintile Pluto, and it does come from your willpower. But having made a decision that you want something, then you have to decide, well, actually, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to make it happen? And with this Mars quintile Pluto, I think that you may be able to start to create some kind of plan, and you're helped as well by the fact that the Sun is trine Saturn. So there's something you can start to get off the ground. It doesn't mean that you have to actually take action, but it could be the beginning of something quite important. Then at the end of a weekend, the Moon does change sign. It may not even be the end of a weekend in the Americas. Pacific Standard Time, it might be late on Saturday. Certainly the end of a weekend if you're in Australia or New Zealand on Sunday. But the Moon does change sign. It moves into Cancer, and with the Moon moving into Cancer, there is a certain seriousness to the Moon moving into Cancer, and it might link with what I was just saying about plans. How do you have an impact? And with the Moon moving into Cancer, you're starting to think, well, what actually do you need to do? What actually are those logical steps? And I think by the end of a weekend, you perhaps need to be, or could be, thinking about the future and thinking about what exactly you need to do. And, if you have the chance to do things on your own, sort things out on your own, align yourself on your own, it requires a bit of work. It requires some focus. There may be, small details and fine tuning that you have to get involved with, but I think that is, all for the best. Pisces. The weekend begins with, a lot of planets in Gemini. We have Moon and Mars in Gemini. We've got Uranus in Gemini, and we've got a Moon conjunct Mars in Gemini as well. So Pisces, that might say something about what's going on at home. I mean, it is a weekend. People do tend to spend more time at home at the weekend than at other times, and so there could be, on one hand, something quite constructive going on at home, because the moon in Gemini is making a sextile to the sun, making a sextile to Saturn. It may be that you can sort of get yourself together. You can maybe even get other people together. There might be something about sort of domestic finances that can be sorted out. Maybe it's about bills and who owes who what, who is sharing a bill, who is contributing. So there might be these kind of questions. But then, the moon does make a conjunction to Mars, and in late Gemini, and moon conjunct Mars, it can be quite an angry aspect. And if you spend a lot of time at home with that Moon-Mars conjunction, as the moon moves towards that conjunction to Mars, just there is a growing sense of irritation that something has to be said, and the more time you spend in one place, the more the pressure starts to build, and so perhaps you shouldn't stay in one place with one group of people, or one person, with one member of your family, because that Moon-Mars conjunction could turn out to be a little bit explosive. I mean, not totally explosive. The Moon-Mars is in Gemini. It's not in a fire sign, and with Moon-Mars conjunction in Gemini, it's probably verbal, and there might be a fair amount of hot air there, especially as there aren't any planets in Earth signs. Where is the application? Yeah, it's easy to get angry, but is it easy? How easy is it to persist with the anger? And maybe the answer is it's not very easy. Yeah, there are moments of anger, but I think that anger just finds it difficult to maintain itself, and it just in the end might just turn out to be just so much hot air. And then the moon moves into Cancer, so by the end of a weekend, Sunday, moon in Cancer, and in general, moon moving through Cancer is probably easier from the moon moving into Gemini. Moving through Gemini, moon in Cancer can be sort of more relaxed, perhaps more just more creative in a gentle sense, and there are things that you just want to do in your own way, and maybe you just you don't want too much attention. Also on Sunday we've got Mercury changing sign. Mercury moves out of Cancer and into Leo, and Mercury moving into Leo perhaps creates a change of emphasis. And when Mercury moves into Leo, it does start making a conjunction to Jupiter, and this conjunction to Jupiter is relevant to Pisces, because Mercury Jupiter conjunctions in the Pisces horoscope can be about relationships. And so Mercury conjunct Jupiter can be about someone moving towards you, a relationship starting to develop. It's a kind of relationship that might need to be carefully managed. The relationship may not be romantic. It might have a practical nature, but there does seem that with Mercury moving into Leo, someone has a role. They can do something useful. They can perhaps sort something out. They can fix something. They can perhaps create a bit of order. And you might, in fact, notice that someone has a change. Someone was just focusing on maybe themselves and what they could do, and they might have been just ever so slightly chaotic, but a fun person to have around. But then with Mercury moving into Cancer, moving into Leo, it could be about someone just becoming more serious and more engaged in particular tasks, not being so scattered, thinking about what actually needs to be done. So I would have said, looking specifically at the weekend, I think that Sunday is an easier day. I think perhaps there's less going on, but additionally, Mercury moving into Cancer, that is something longer term. The Mercury stays in Cancer until the 25th of August, and so that says something about the next few weeks. And with Mercury moving into Cancer, moving through Leo, that joins the Sun and Jupiter in Leo, and so that might be a time for you to get things together, and perhaps to be able to get things together with another person's help. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now it's time to turn to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is the weekend going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 17, which is following. So if you look at this hexagram, you see the top three lines. The top trigram represents a lake. It's a very watery top trigram. The bottom trigram represents thunder. So you could say, well, it's thunder under a lake, or you could say that the thunder is being temporarily sort of moderated. I won't say suppressed. That there's certainly a lot of fire this weekend with that thunder. You can feel the potential of that thunder, but it's under wraps. And the face of that thunder is the lake. And so it might be that one feels that one has to kind of retreat a bit. We are living in dramatic times, that's for sure, but we don't want to be in the center of things all the time, and so we sometimes need to take a step back. But it is called following, this hexagram, and so there is this question of influence and who is influencing who. And if we take a step back, that doesn't mean that we're being ignored, that people don't mean, but people suddenly forget that we exist. No, far from it. I think that in a way, by retreating, we are almost adding to our power. Perhaps people realize we're not there anymore, or we're a bit more distant, we're perhaps a little more inaccessible, and that might just encourage them to work out where we've gone. And there is this question, who is the follower and who is the leader? I mean, we can be something of a leader, and why are we a leader? Because we understand, because we understand what's going on both an emotional and an intuitive level. We do get it. We get what the universe is saying. We get the vibes that are swirling, all around us. And in the process, we may have to make some changes. Some things perhaps have to be given up. We have three moving lines. Second line moves, third line moves, fifth line moves. And the second line and the third line are kind of opposite to one another. The second line is about clinging to the child. The third line is clinging to the strong adult. So what does that mean? Well, we're talking about an inner process here. So the second line is suggesting that we might be inclined to give precedence to people who are not particularly knowledgeable. It could be quite immature. They could be flattering as well. And it may not just be people, it may be ideas. We're going to just perhaps be inclined to go for the ideas and actions which are just easiest, perhaps less mature. But the trouble is, if we do that, we've got a choice. There are serious people out there, and there are not so serious people. And in the first instance, we're just going to do whatever's easiest, and we may make choices which, in a way, are the wrong choices. We don't want people around who are hard work. We perhaps want to just enjoy ourselves, have a relaxing life. That might be our first inclination. But then the third line comes in, and the third line is about sort of putting away, those, the childish things, and that may say something about our childishness, and perhaps just being more adult and sort of growing up. And recognizing that, things are actually quite serious. And then the fifth line moves, and the fifth line, I think, is really quite positive, and it is about following, but it's about following the right things, the right path. And this takes us forward to a second hexagram, and that second hexagram is hexagram number 34, which is the power of the great. So that is the power of us. It is getting a real sense of what we can do, if given the opportunity. We're perhaps aware of our own raw power. It's good to have that raw power, but power on its own may be dangerous, because we just go down the wrong path. And there is very much this question of where we are applying ourselves. And we do have this sense that there is a right thing to do and a wrong thing to do. So in the previous hexagram, you could say we are making some alignments here. We have kind of retreated from the fire. We've tried to keep things stable, and we've had to make some decisions about who we're going to follow. And hopefully we've made the right decisions. And then moving to the power of the great, we feel this is the time to move forward. And if we've made the right decisions about what to follow, then we're going to be okay, because we will definitely be moving in the right direction, and we will be able to use our power to get results. And that's it. That's all I've got to say in this video. I hope you have a great weekend. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. Don't forget that I've just opened the membership part of the channel, and for the membership, which I think is $4.99 a month, I do put out an extra video. I'm still working out what I'm going to be doing with the membership channel, but I'm still working out the possibilities there. But I will certainly be putting out an extra video every week, which at the moment I'm planning that video to be of an instructional nature, but I'm certainly prepared to listen to the feedback and ideas of those of you that decide to join the membership part. Anyway, that really is it. And yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I'm sure I will be talking to you again very soon.